Hey, good morning. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to do thinning on your seedlings. So these guys, we started on March 1st, and this is Kale, which is a cold hardy mix. The ideal time to thin your seedlings is when they're in the cotyledon stage, which is when they have just their heart-shaped leaves coming out. But I waited a little bit too long, and so the next best time to start thinning is when when you have about 2 to 3 sets of your true leaves, and you can see on these kale that their true leaves are coming out. One thing that I would have done differently if I could go back would be to correct the legginess on these guys. So we started these March 1st, and they were doing really well. They had really nice dense growth, but I had to take them home over the weekend so that they wouldn't dry out when they were still in their fragile stages, and they started to reach towards the light because my setup at home was not prepared for seedlings. So they're a little bit leggy. So I'm gonna go through and show you guys how to thin these and how to pick the best stock out of all of them. It kind of seems a little bit wasteful to go through and thin your seedlings, but in order to ensure that you have the proper germination, you need to seed multiple per pot, and that's what I did. I seeded about 3 per cell in each container, and so I will go ahead and show you guys how to choose the best kale plant and what to do from there. So I'm using these snips. They're a lot smaller and a lot easier to maneuver around smaller plants rather than really big pruners. So these are really handy to use. And I'm just gonna go through each cell, and this guy, so this has, I'm going to use this as an example. So this has 2 kale seedlings in it, and this one has a stockier stem and it isn't reaching as bad, and so I'm going to go ahead and keep this one and just snip this right at the base and take this guy out. And I'm just going to go through and do that with every cell that I have, and then if there are any plants that I just don't want because I don't think that they're going to perform well, I'm just going to go ahead and remove them. Another reason that you thin out seedlings is because they can start to outcompete each other once they're big enough and once they're competing and reaching for light. And you just want to take away any factors, any environmental factors that you think is going to prevent them from growing and performing their best. And this is also a cold hardy mix, and so there's a few different types of kale in here. So I'm also going to try and keep a variety so that when they get planted outside, you don't just have one type of kale. Another thing is that when I'm going through, a lot of these that are really leggy, they're a lot thinner down at the base rather than at their top stem up here. And so I'm just trying to remove the ones that have that really weak base, because once they get planted outside, they probably will fail and won't survive. So again, just trying to pick the ones that have the hardiest stems. And then if you have 2 in a cell that look pretty equal, you can just go ahead and pick the one that you think looks best. All right. Okay, so these are all thin now. You can kind of still see the ones that are leggy, that shot up really fast when they were reaching for light, but once these start to get hardened off outside, they're gonna hit the wind is gonna hit them a little bit, and they're gonna start to grow even stronger in their stems. And a great part about kale is when you're planting it outside is you can bury the stems just a little bit deeper. So even if they're still a little bit leggy, when they're going in the ground, you can bury them just slightly deeper once they have those solid, strengthened stems. Otherwise, if you plant them a little bit too soon and they have the really really leggy, weak stems, and you plant them too deep, they could dampen off and die outside just due to root rot in the soil. So you really want to make sure that they're hardened off when you put them outside, and then wait a little bit, wait till they're acclimated, since I grew these indoors, until they go into the ground. And since we're a zone 6 to 7, the most ideal time to plant kale outside is between April 13th and May 4th. So kind of just depending and watching the weather and when you have your garden beds prepped, that's about the ideal time to plant these in the ground. So thanks for watching.